How's it going, everybody? It is Super Plush Bear here. Hope you guys are having a good day today. Welcome back to another video. In this video, it's kind of a bit of a big long video here, because as you guys can see, it's kind of a bit of a long video here. But that's because we're just gonna be doing a Secret of the Mimic thoughts and discussion video. Like, this is literally just gonna be ranting for probably about 50 something minutes, maybe up to an hour, where we're just gonna be talking about Secret of the Mimic. I was gonna do different videos about Secret of the Mimic because I had a few things I wanted to do, but I thought because I really want to get back into the groove of creating more FNaF X videos for you guys, because I've been absent on that for a while now. I thought I'm just gonna make one whole video about everything for Secret of the Mimic. So this will probably be the last video I will be making for Secret of the Mimic, okay? So yeah, guys, I'm just gonna put everything in one big video because there is a lot that I want to talk about in this game. So we're gonna obviously a lot of this we're gonna talk about the lore too. We're gonna kind of get into the lore later on. That will probably be the last thing I'm gonna talk about. But the first few things I want to talk about is, you know, like the gameplay and stuff and some other stuff with Secret of the Mimic and, you know, all that. Also, guys, I'll get to it when I get into the lore part. So let's first talk about just kind of the gameplay itself, okay? Let's talk about the gameplay itself, okay? Because I was going to do a video where I was comparing, you know, Secret of the Mimic and Security Breach. We're going to do that in this video. And then I was going to do a video about Secret of the Mimic versus Poppy Playtime, or FNaF versus Poppy Playtime, because that's something that was going around as well. I'm going to do that in this video. And then later on, we're going to talk about the endings on which one's canon, and then that's where we're going to get into the lore, okay? So, the first thing, we're just going to get straight to it, guys, okay? The first thing we're going to talk about is gameplay-wise, okay? So, how is the gameplay overall in Secret of the Mimic? Honestly, I think it's somewhat very smooth. It's very smooth. I think, you know, I didn't experience many bugs that I did in Security Breach. I'm not going to lie. I think Wool put all of their effort into this game, because apparently this was in development for I think a year and a half, so they must really they really put up their all into this game, and I think they did a very awesome job. I think, you know, as far as for bug wise, I think there may have been like minor bugs, but you know, there weren't like major bugs like there was in Security Breach, like there was where you would fall through the map in Monty's golf course. Like, there wasn't any of that in this game. So, yeah, I think overall it was a very smooth game. I didn't have any problems with it. I just really enjoyed it. Like, honestly, it was a very awesome, fun, scary game, you know? And that's another thing I want to talk about, too, is the horror, you know? Yeah, I know that I'm kind of comparing this to Security Breach, but the thing is, though, these are the only two free roam games that Steel's made. And I thought, you know, just kind of comparing them, you know? Obviously, you know, they're completely different, you know, types of games, and they're completely different, you know, themes, but how do we make it different, though? Now, obviously, the one big thing is, you know, obviously, you know, it's not as big as Security Breach, you know? Security Breach, you know, was a huge mall, okay? This was just a factory, you know, almost the size of Roxy's Raceway, or at least, you know, it might be a little bigger than that, I don't know. But they said in an interview that the entire facility fits into Roxy's Raceway, which I think was really cool. And actually, it might have been that big. I'm not sure though. But let's talk about when it comes to the horror, because I think there's a huge difference with the horror of this game rather than, you know, the scariness, okay? In Security Breach, we didn't really get that much of a horror vibe into it. We kind of have more of like a very fun, like 80s vibe, you know what I mean? Now, I think some of the only, like, scary moments we actually get in Security Breach is when we're underneath, down there in the sewers where Chica is, and probably where the, Burger Trap, Afton is. I think those are the only few points that we really get, like, a scary part in Security Breach, you know? Because, you know, we'll admit, I can easily admit now that it doesn't have that much scariness to it. Don't get me wrong, Security Breach is still a good game. Like, I would still go back and play it to this day. But if we want to talk about something that needs to be scary, Security Breach didn't really have that. Now, with Ruin, I think Ruin's tone definitely improved when it comes to scariness. But I think the problem with Ruin was that we didn't really get to do much exploration. And that's another thing I want to talk about is Secret of the Mimic was able to give us so much exploration. And the security breach in the base game, we were able to do that, but until the very, very end of the game, you know? With this one, we were able to explore basically where we wanted to go. But we just had to make sure we had the upgrade thing in order to get to that. But once we had the upgrade, we could go access that room now. Which I thought that was really cool, that we were able to actually, like, explore more and Secret of the Mimic. Because, you know, I think a lot of people like games like that where we can literally just have the free range to explore where we need to. Now, obviously, we have to get the proper upgrade in order to access the areas, but once we have it, then we can go over there. So I thought that was a really cool thing. So yeah, but yeah, I think as far as horror-wise, I think Secret of the Mimic definitely did a good job for horror because, you know, it's definitely scary, okay? And the reason why I say that is because of the fact that you don't know what costume the Mimics are gonna be in, okay? That's why I find this scary. It's because when you're in the areas that you see all of the costumes everywhere, you're not gonna know what costume the Mimic is gonna go in, okay? And that's the scary part. And the thing is too, and here's the other thing I want to talk about, the chasing. Getting chased by the Mimic compared to getting chased by the animatronics in Security Breach. Here's the difference. In Security Breach, in order to get chased by the animatronics, it's either they see you and they come at you, or those security bots make their alarms out and they call for an animatronic. At Secret of the Mimic, if the Mimic sees you, it's coming at you. But here's the thing though. If the Mimic sees you from a very close distance, you have a very less chance of surviving. But in Security Breach, if they see you from a close distance, you have more of a... What I'm basically saying, guys, is that the Mimic chase and Secret of the Mimic compared to Security Breach is very, very fast. The Mimic can run fast, okay? Because there's been times in my playthrough that whenever I get caught by the Mimic in whichever costume, they run. And I would run and not get stuck into anything, I would still get caught. So that's the thing. They run very fast in Secret of the Mimic compared to the animatronics and Security Breach who don't necessarily run fast. I think the only animatronic in Security Breach that probably ran pretty quick that could potentially get you is probably Monty. But, you know, that's another thing I want to talk. That was the other thing I want to talk about. So I think when it comes to getting chased in the game in Secret of the Mimic, it's way more horrifying because you know that they run fast. You can still get away from them. It's just, you know, I think it's a little more tricky now. Only because now the fact that you don't know what costume the Mimic's going to be in. So that makes it cool. I think that's cool, but it's also very scary. And honestly, I think the final result came out awesome, you know? Because I'm not as disappointed with the final result as I was with Security Breach. Because at the end of Security Breach, I think a lot of people were very disappointed with Security Breach's final result. With this one, though, I'm not really disappointed with the result. It's kind of, in a way, kind of what I thought it was going to be, you know? I think the reason why people were so disappointed in Security Breach's final result is for a few reasons. Number one, I think the biggest thing was Vanny not being utilized enough. And that's kind of one of my biggest disappointments in Security Breach as well, because, you know, Vanny wasn't utilized enough. We didn't necessarily battle the animatronics that much. I think the only animatronic we really had a boss fight with was probably Monty. But, you know, I don't know. Not a lot of people were happy with the final results for Security Breach, and I can see why. But with Secret of the Mimic, though, I was kind of happy with how it came out, you know? I didn't have any disappointments in it. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, guys, overall, I think it's a very good game, gameplay-wise overall. It just, you know, the results and how it is and stuff, I just think it's really cool. Now, this is where I'm going to get into the lore of the game, because now we're going to get into the endings of Secret of the Mimic. Now, before I start with the lore here, I will let you guys know that I am not like game theory. I am not an expert when it comes to the FNaF lore. I know all the characters very well for FNaF, but I am not too big into... I haven't digged deep into the lore. I think the only lore part that I've gotten into now is from Help Wanted to now. So just bear with me, guys, okay? I might be wrong in some of these bullet points, but I literally have a whole thing written down in my notebook here of just some of the bullet points I have in the game. So please don't come at me if I am wrong or if I'm wrong, okay? So don't come at me, please, okay? And if I'm correct, I'm correct. But if I'm wrong, please don't come at me, okay? Because again, I'm not confirming everything. I'm just thinking. I'm just theorizing what my thoughts are, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about all 3 endings, and then I'm gonna talk about which one's real or not. So I'm kind of just gonna go through how we get to these endings and stuff. Obviously, there's a few bullet points I will point out, but I'm not gonna go into details about them yet, okay? So let's start off with the first ending. The first ending is kind of very simple. All we do is we go back to the security office, and then Dispatch Andy tells us to give him the mimic blueprints, which is basically the data diver, because we got the mimic blueprints. So we give him the mimic blueprints. We put the data diver into the inventory machines. Then he tells us to go back to the van, and we're free to go. So at that moment, we're probably like, okay, we gave Fazbear Entertainment the mimic blueprints. So we thought. So this is what happens though. As we're in the van, Dispatch Andy comes back to us and says, "Hey, what is going on here? Did you lose the mimic blueprints? Because we never got them." And then Arnold's like, I was just talking to you. And then, Dispatch Andy's like, you lost the mimic blueprints. And then Arnold's like, but I gave them to you. You told me to give them to you. And then, Andy's like, no, we did it. And they're running a lawsuit. So, obviously, Fazbear Entertainment, Dispatch Andy never got the mimic blueprints. But here's why. Throughout NCM, when Dispatch Andy was talking to us, it was never actually Andy that was talking. It was the mimic. It was M1 Fiona, okay? Now again, I will get into some details about M1 Fiona in a little bit. But basically, after we got confronted by Dispatch Andy, the real Andy from Fazbear Entertainment, M2 was in the back of the van. He attacks us. He puts us into a suit. And you can see we're performing on stage next to what looks like a prototype of Bonnie and Chica. And then we're probably in the prototype of Freddy. And we're performing. And you could see M2 is standing there watching us. And you could tell it's a bad ending because Fazbear Entertainment never got the blueprints. And that whole thing's just going to go over again. It's like you're going to play the whole game over and over again. You're going to have somebody else come over there, try to get the blueprints, and they don't. So, yeah, that's the bad ending, but it's not canon, though. We'll go into the second ending now. Again, I know I kind of just pointed out some things there, but again, I will get into details about those in a little bit. The second ending. Instead of giving M1 Mimic Andy the Mimic blueprints, okay? And again, I wrote all this down in my notebook here. I have to make sure I can find the, there we go. We access parachute.exe, okay? So we access parachute.exe. We go through the vent that's in the office. Then we take a lift that's from the show, the welcome show place. We take that lift down. Obviously, now we're getting haunted by what looks like to be a very ruined up Big Top Music Man. We get away from him, and we make our way to the R&D FNaF 1 location. And you can tell as we're doing that, M1 is starting to get very, very annoyed at us because we did not listen to what she wanted us to do. And by the way, Andy is right now, M1 Fiona is right now mimicking Andy, okay? And I'll tell you why she's doing that a little bit. But basically, she's getting annoyed at us because we're not doing what she's telling us to do. We've reached the R&D FNaF 1 location, and then M2 is there attacking us. So we do that. We go through the FNaF 1 location. Then we get introduced to Fiona, all right? Because we have to shut down the power using the spring lock costumes. She tells us to go inside because she has no other option. Again, I'll play that for you guys right here.
You give me no other option. Enter. And here you are. Despite the circumstances, it is nice to meet you face to face.
So then she explains everything to us, and then we reach Edwin's house, All right, and you could see that M2 is still attacking us, or he's still trying to come at us. Then we reach what I believe is Edward's office, but it looks like some type of explosion happened because the roof collapsed and the walls kind of collapsed a little bit. And you can see that Edward's not there. And there is a tape there, and what's interesting about this tape is that apparently M2 has fixed legs. And it seems like Edward is trapped. Alright, again, we'll talk about that a little bit. Then we go into the surveillance room, and we access Cradle.exe, and if you looked at the top, it has the MXES thing, and we know what that stands for. MXES stands for Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage. Then we get chased by M2, the Mimic Endoskeleton. Then we leave, the place is on fire, and then as we're trying to leave, as Arnold tries to escape, M2 stops us and then takes that data diver. Now remember this though. Cradle.exe is MXES, okay? So now we have that installed into the data diver and M2 takes it, okay? And then he just walks away. Where does he go? No idea. We don't know where he goes because MCM is on fire now. It's on fire. And I don't know, maybe he went to Fredbear's Family Diner. But we now know that he's got the data diver with MXES installed into it. Alright? Now again, we're going to get into details about that in a little bit, okay? Now we're going to move on to the last ending, okay? This is the good ending, okay? Basically what we do is we have to play the game again and we have to collect all 25 collectibles, okay? Then once we do that, we were able to do Moon.exe. And then basically we just go ahead, we do that, we have to beat that. And then once we beat that, Fiona gives us the access here. She gives us the glitched permission, which is basically that once we reach Edward's house, we're able to access the secret glitched doors, okay? And the other thing I wanted to talk about was when we go to Edward's house, we have to go around and we have to find the, I think it's, well, if it's David, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, we have to find the 5 color film reels, okay? And they play these films of Edward's birthday. And again, this is kind of where I will then talk about M1 and M2. But that's basically, we have to find those film reels before we get access to Edward's office. So I forgot to point that out. So going back to here, this is to the good ending. We can access the glitch permission rooms where we normally put the data diver in. The things are glitched. We access those, and we have to find, I believe it was 6 tapes, okay? We have to find 6 tapes. All right, so once we get all the 6 tapes, we then make our way to what is David's bedroom, okay? Now, again, we're going to get into details about this a little bit because the bedroom, again, we'll talk about the bedroom. So we reach Edward's bedroom, or not Edward, David's bedroom. I said Edward. We reach David's bedroom, okay? And then, M2 comes out of the closet, and you could tell that, and the reason why M2 keeps, glitching here, because this was right after M2 was able to mimic rage. This was after he got destroyed by Edwin. And basically all we do is we do the book, and you could tell, and when we do the book, it calms him down because it's Fiona and Edwin telling the story. Then we fix M2, and then he turns back into David, all right? And then that was it. That was that ending. So there you guys go. That's how that ending ended up. So now we're going to talk about what was the actual canon ending, okay? Now, unfortunately, as much as it's kind of unfortunate when you think about it, the ending where we fix M2 into David is unfortunately not canon. Because M2 was never fixed. We never fixed M2. We never fixed him. Because we see him in Security Breach Ruin, okay? So that's why it's not canon. And the first ending, where M2's in the back of the van, is not canon either because that process is just going to happen all over again. I think the real ending, the true canon ending to this game, is when we escape, the place is on fire, M2 stops us, and takes the data diver with MXES inside. Because in Ruin, we see the MXES machine. And then we see M2 in Ruin, okay? So that's why I think that's canon. So now, let's go on to M1 and M2, okay? So, again, we're going to talk about them real quick here. So let's start with M1. Now let's remember this. M1 and M2 are just programs, okay? They're programs. Now, at first, I thought it was like Mimic 1 and Mimic 2. Like, I thought it was going to be like 2 endoskeletons. No, it's 2 programs, okay? It's only 1 endoskeleton, but it's 2 programs, okay? So let's talk about M1 first, because M1 has a lot here. M1 mimics Fiona, okay? M1 is mimicking Fiona because, we got to remember, Fiona died, I guess, by a fire at Fall Fest, okay? We don't know what happened, though, but I think, we might get a Fall Fest game. Yeah, we'll talk about that later on. And then M2 was designed to mimic David, because we got to remember David died as well, okay? So Edwin made these programs to mimic Fiona and to mimic David. Now let's talk about M1 Fiona real quick. So this is kind of what I want to talk about here. So the reason why Fiona was mimicking Andy is because Fiona was trying to protect Edwin, because there's a tape where Edwin did not want anybody to get the mimic blueprints, okay? So yeah, she's obviously doing this as a protection, so that way no one can get their hands on the mimic blueprints. But then like I said before, when we were to access parachute.exe, she started to get really annoyed at us because we weren't doing what she was telling us to do. Okay, because all she told us to do was to give her the blueprints and leave. We didn't do that. We accessed parachute.exe and we kept going underground to find Fiona. Okay, so you could tell that she was getting very annoyed. Then what happened was, when we reached the RD FNaF 1 location, after we had to turn all the power off with the spray lock suits, which we will get into the spray lock suits in a little bit because they're kind of important as well. After Andy cuts off and turns back into Fiona, she tells us, like I played it earlier, she tells us to have no other choice but to enter the office, and that's where we see Fiona.
You give me no other option. Enter. And here you are. Despite the circumstances, it is nice to meet you face to face. It is lonely down here.
Wait, what? What are you? A computer? Your voice changed. What is going on?
You have questions, but there is no time. I'm almost out of power. You can still be useful. My communications with Edwin have been severed. Edwin abandoned us. He shut himself away in our home. Head to the main house and activate the communications sub-terminal. I have a message for you. We must convince him to repair M2. That is all that I want. If you do not, M2 will never stop pursuing you. Tell Edwin, I still love him. Entering standby mode.
Now, I'm sure I just played the full thing right there with Fiona, but basically Fiona, all she wants from us is to fix M2, She doesn't have any communication with Edwin at all, because Edwin either died or ran away, okay? But yeah, all that Fiona wants us to do is to fix M2. And we technically did that with the good ending, but it's not canon. It is not canon, okay? It still sucks to think about because, it would have been a very happy time. It would have been, because I bet you if that didn't happen, if fixing M2 was canon, then this whole thing with the animatronics killing people probably would not have been a thing. Okay? So that's why it's not canon. Okay? So, I think that's why it's not canon. So, with M1 Fiona, and also this is the other point I want to talk about too, there's a one of the birthday reels when we collect those little film reels at Edward's house, one of the things that I showed was M1 mimicking Fiona holding a cake. Okay? Now, obviously, that was a big reveal because that was revealing us not only Fiona, but the endoskeleton mimic for the first time. Okay? So, you know, that obviously was Fiona, you know? And there's also a tape, too, in, like, the middle of the game where Edwin introduces David to M1 Fiona.
David, I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1.
Why does it look like that?
Look like what?
It's scary.
Oh, it's an endoskeleton. It won't always look like this. It'll wear fun costumes.
Like what?
Anything you want. It can fit into any costume we've created. Think of it as your new babysitter. But it doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us and help around the house.
So, you know, David was a little scared at first because, you know, it's an endoskeleton, okay? But then you see that, you know, M1 and David were becoming good friends. You know, there was even a picture of them, you know, sitting on the hill. The factory was a long distance away. They're on a hill having a good time. You know, they're really close, okay? And we kind of talked about that earlier on before the game, you know, how the Mimic and David were good friends, you know, a good relationship, okay? So, yeah, that was that, okay? So I think that's kind of more all the basics with M1 Fiona. And also, when we talk about the Moon.exe and 2, the sun that is in Moon.exe, that is Fiona. Because when we go into that office where Fiona is, you can see the sun icon pop up on the screens, okay? So that kind of shows that the sun is Fiona. Now let's talk about M2, okay? We're going to talk about M2. So after David died, Edward made M2 to mimic David, okay? But it didn't really go the way Edward wanted to. Now, of course, with Edward having so much grief and stuff, Edward then lets all that anger and grief out on M2, okay? All right? And again, I'm going to play that for you guys right here.
Stop. You're not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him!
So yeah, he destroys M2, okay? And that's why later on out the game, we hear the tape of M2 now being aggressive towards Edwin because now he says he's got fixed legs. And that's why we see that he's being aggressive now, because we gotta remember, it mimicked Edward's rage. Which is not surprising because it's literally called the Mimic. It can mimic anybody's behavior, okay? We kind of learned that even before the game came out, and we learned that throughout the game. So yeah, it trapped Edwin, and now the M2 is being the aggressive one now. So yeah, M2 traps Edwin.
Test. Journal entry. Too bad the new power test was a failure. Due to a minor detonation, there is damage to my office interior, as well as a small fire. Note to self, portable cleaner that gets rid of smoke damage. Or better yet, a Cleanovac attachment.
Help! M2! Respond! Emergency! Call for help!
Daddy's busy, buddy. Why don't you go outside and play?
Please! I can't move. I can't feel my legs.
You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out.
I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you. Please, call for help. M2, respond.
Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise. Ask your mom if she's not busy.
M2, help.
Now, if we're going to talk about Edwin real quick, we don't know exactly what happened to Edwin. We don't know what happens to him in the lore yet. We don't know if he dies or he's escaped and just ran away. We just know that he's gone missing. So it's either that he did die or he's just left and gone missing. Okay? So we don't know what happens, okay? We don't know what happens to him yet. Now, let's talk about moon.exe real quick, okay? Because I think this holds a lot, okay? So, moon.exe. Now, as you can see, we see the sun in there, okay? Which we know that the sun is Fiona. The moon is probably Edwin. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think this. I think throughout the moon.exe, it's literally us playing as M2 trying to escape of wherever we were trapped at. Because there was a shot in there where we go into like a cave, the moon pops out, okay? The moon pops out, and it puts us back to where we were. That's basically Edwin catching us and putting us back to where we were. Now it's funny because we see the little owl, and we put on the owl max, okay? Apparently the owl represents David, so when we go back into that cave and we put on the owl mask, it's the moon running away. Because, you know, the M2's terrified at the moon. But when we put on the owl mask to represent Edwin, or not Edwin, David, you know, Edwin, the moon goes away. Okay? So I honestly think that M2 is... Honestly, I think the moon.exe is basically M2 trying to escape. Okay? And so then we did M to do that. So basically, we do moon.exe, like I said before, it gives us the glitched permission, okay, to access the secret rooms. Okay? So basically with M2 was to mimic David. Edwin takes the rage out on M2. Now M2 has that rage and anger and trapped Edwin. And again, we don't know if Edwin dies or he escapes and leaves. Okay? So with the whole moon.exe thing, okay, again, I might be wrong when I say that before, so again, don't come at me if I'm wrong. But I think with the sun being Fiona, the moon being Edwin, and the owl to represent David, you know, I think it just shows that we're playing as M2 and we're trying to escape on wherever we're at in the moon.exe game. So yeah, there's definitely a lot about that. Okay. So now let's talk about the R&D FNaF 1 location, because again, it looks very similar to FNaF 1, and you can tell that the animatronics are like the original FNaF 1 animatronic designs. Okay. And again, these look like prototypes of the FNaF 1 animatronics. So apparently this was the big project that Edwin was working on. Because, you know, apparently Edwin and Fazbear Entertainment were going to work together here. But then, Fazbear Entertainment backed out at the last minute.
Are they insane? The look of these new animatronics is Fiona's design, and they're great. Oh, first they approved the art, then they approved the proofs. Now they changed their minds when we're so close to final. Why would they change them now? Are they pulling my leg? The new concepts are frankly creepy. No, it doesn't matter. I'm not changing a single bit of her work, and they can't make me.
So yeah, guys, so Fazbear Entertainment backed out at the last minute. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go too detailed about this part because I didn't really get too much. I didn't really write down so much information about this part, so I'm not going to talk about this part too much, because I didn't write enough information to. But apparently, William Afton basically took everything from Edwin. Okay? Now, actually, I got to backtrack a little bit here because now I'm going to go back to the moon.exe thing real quick here. I know I just kind of went to William Afton and stuff, but the last thing I wanted to point out here, okay? With moon.exe, one of the other reasons why we're playing as M2 is because there's a section there in this thing there where we go into MCM Archive. Mr. Helffel's there. He says this quote, "You rebuilt yourself." So yes, M2 rebuilt himself and is now able to go and get Edwin. Okay, so I wanted to throw that out there real quick. Now let's go back to William Afton and Edwin real quick. Basically, the bottom line here at this point here is basically William Afton takes everything away from Edwin. Okay, here's why I say that. Again, I'm not gonna go into too details about this because I don't have that much information for this. But I could kind of share some screenshots on screen. The first thing is, there's that message by William Afton, because, it does say WA at the end, which W is for William, A is for Afton. So, you have that message there, okay? Then, here's some other little details. Edward's house is on a hill. William's house is on a hill, okay? Now, this is kind of going to why I say that the second ending, the one where we leave the warehouse that's on fire, the mimic stops us as can, because the place is on fire, Edwin had, underground facilities. In the future, William Afton had underground facilities. I think that just the bottom line of this, I think William Afton took everything from Edwin, That's why, like in the future, Fazbear Entertainment stole these ideas, because, we see, it's what was confirmed in the game that we see Monty in the game. Because, in the future, we see, Montgomery Gator, okay? So that's why I just think, that's how I think Fazbear Entertainment started to take everything from Edwin, because William Afton literally took everything away. And also with the bedroom, David's bedroom. Very similar to the FNaF 4 bedroom in FNaF 4, okay? So yeah, I think in the bottom line there, I think Edwin or William Afton took everything away from Edwin. Or, yeah, he just took everything from him, okay? The houses, the underground facilities, I just think he took everything. Now, I'm gonna talk about this real quick, because I think this is another good thing to bring up. Again, I was gonna kind of sort of do another video on this guy as well, but I think, I'm just gonna do this all in one video. I want to talk about Sleepy Moon. So if you guys don't know, this is another way to get one of the collectibles if you want to reach the good ending. But basically what you do is, there is a room that you can access then. You go through the lobby, it's another room, it's kind of like where all the costumes are at. Kind of like, it's almost like an archive of all the characters and stuff. You reach that room, there's an elevator that you take, you basically go down, and it takes you to the room where the big giant music head is, okay? So, I think it's in like the story showroom, like where the birthday showroom is, the big top showroom. It's like the story showroom, okay? It's kind of like a construction there that's going on. Well, that's because a big giant moon collapsed down and is now down there in that area, okay? So here's what I'm talking about. So that big giant moon collapses down there, okay? And as we're down there trying to get the collectible, there is a moon character. There's a moon character roaming around down there. Now, here is kind of the things I've heard about this moon character. Or here's how this is kind of how it originally happened. So, before that big giant moon collapsed down there, okay? I guess after Edwin tried to destroy the mimic, he trapped the mimic down there where the moon was roaming around at, okay? And apparently, that whole area must have been sealed up. Okay, no one was able to have access down there. Now, why is this moon character roaming around? Well, here's a theory. So when Edwin was down there trying to seal it up, so no one got access to this, there was somebody working down there, okay? There was somebody working down there, just doing their normal duty down there, okay? So when Edwin sealed that place up, so when no one can access to it, to give no permission down there, the worker that was down there was abandoned and was trapped down there, and then ended up getting killed by M2, the Mimic. Now, how can it be the Mimic though? Well, here's why. We gotta remember, the reason why the Mimic killed this worker is because this was right after it was almost destroyed by Edwin. So when it mimicked its rage, and it let out its rage on this worker. Okay? Now, I don't know if this moon character that is roaming around the place if the Mimic is inside it, or it's this worker roaming around. I mean, I think it might just be the Mimic inside. But if it was a human inside that would have been cool. But I think just to be safe here, I think it is probably just the Mimic. But here's something to think about. So then this big giant moon collapses down there. Now there's a big giant hole on the top. Okay, so we got, remember, the Mimic's trapped down here because Edwin threw the Mimic down here. You know, after he tried to destroy it, this big giant thing collapses down, and then the Mimic gets out and escapes. It goes after Edwin. Okay. Now, again, with this moon creature, we don't know if it's the Mimic inside or if it's, you know, this human that was left down there after he got killed, got stuffed into the suit. We don't know, okay? So I'm not gonna really pick on that. I think if it was, you know, I'm just gonna go with the simple answer of probably the Mimic is inside that suit. But if it was the human that was killed down there and put into that suit, that kind of would have been a cool detail as well, like the good lore for the lore, you know. But I don't know, so I'll let you guys decide on that. I don't know. Was there anything else I missed? God, I think I kind of covered everything, guys. But real quick, let's talk about the future here of what we could see next from FNaF, okay? Because I think there's a lot. Because I think we know now that the final game for FNaF will probably be when Cassie, Gregory, Vanessa, hopefully Edwin come together and they have to defeat the Mimic M2 and they kill him. He would be gone. Because I feel like it would be done. I feel like after that, it's over. Like, for that timeline, storyline, it's over. And honestly, that could be the end for FNaF. Because I don't know what they're going to do after. You know, they could always do something else. They could probably create a whole new storyline. But I honestly do feel like that after the Mimic gets killed and all that stuff, that actually might be the end. So, we'll see. But I think we could get a Fall Fest game. Because, you know, with Fiona and Fall Fest, I think we can get some stuff there about what happened with Fiona at Fall Fest. Maybe we could get, I don't know, maybe we could get like some type. I think the Fall Fest game would probably be like a prequel to Secret of the Mimic. You know, we could get like a sequel of Secret of the Mimic. But you know, we'll have to see. But I definitely think we might get a few more games before like the final, like, you know, like Security Breach 2 game, you know, which I don't think that would be the name. I'm not sure. They just call it Security Breach 2, where it's Cassie, Greg, and Vanessa killing the Mimic. Big guys. I think there's a lot more games we could see out there. So I definitely don't think this is it yet. I think there's a lot more to see. But we'll have to see, guys, because, you know, we're kind of, I think we're kind of somewhat getting started into like a whole new story. You know, but I think the next few games are going to be about, you know, like the Mimic and stuff. Because, you know, there is a lot going on. So, we're going to have to see, guys. But yeah, guys, I think I covered everything. Again, hopefully I didn't miss anything. I think I covered everything in my notes here. Again, guys, if I did miss anything, please let me know. But I think I pretty much covered everything. So yeah, guys, here are my final thoughts. I think the canon ending for Secret of the Mimic is the second ending where we get chased by the Mimic, the warehouse gets on fire, he stops us, it takes the MXC data diver, or he takes the data diver with MXCS installed into it. That's what I think the canon ending is. So guys, I think I covered everything, guys. Alright? So yeah, guys, I think that's it. Overall, let me just get, I know I keep extending the video here, but let me just give you guys my final thoughts on Secret of the Mimic. I think it's an absolutely fantastic game. I think it's done way better than Security Breach and Ruin. It was not as broken as Security Breach was. It's a very amazing game. Okay, it's awesome. I really love it. You know, I think it's a very fun, scary game, and it's just awesome. It's a major improvement. I think it's probably Steel's best FNaF game yet. You know, don't get me wrong, all their other games are awesome, but I think this is probably the best one yet that they have. And I definitely can't wait to see what they make in the future for FNaF, because I definitely don't think it's not over. It's not over yet. It's not over yet for FNaF. It's not over. I definitely don't think it's over yet. It's not. It can't be over yet. I think there's still a lot of potential yet for more FNaF games in the future by Steel Wool. But yeah, guys, I'm going to end it there. I hope you guys enjoy. I know this was kind of a bit of a long video, but you know, I was going to cover everything in one video rather than doing separate videos of different things. But I think I covered everything. Again, if I missed anything, guys, please comment down below. Let me know what I missed. But I think I covered everything. So yeah, guys, that's it. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Don't worry, guys, because after I am done with this video, after it's edited and all that stuff and then uploaded, I will get back into my groove of making FNaF Hex episodes for you guys. Because I know you guys have been, I know some of you guys have probably been wanting that, okay? So don't worry, okay? You will start getting them. I've got some cool ideas for the future. Recently, I just ordered the FNaF Hex Secret of the Mimic wave. I'm still working on my Hex Secret of the Mimic custom. Obviously, they confirmed there's going to be a second wave, so we'll see what that second wave includes. But yeah, guys, I'm going to leave it at that for you guys. So don't worry, FNaF Hex episodes will come soon, so stay tuned in the future, guys. But yeah, guys, that is officially it for FNaF Secret of the Mimic. Again, if there's any other videos I gotta make with Secret of the Mimic in the future, I will. But I think as far as for the Secret of the Mimic game-wise, I think that's it. So, like and subscribe. Hit comment down below. Make sure you guys follow me on my socials. They'll be in the link in the description. And that is it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this video is very long, but, you know, I want to make sure I get everything I think I did. Again, if I missed anything, comment down below. But yeah, guys, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!